Okay, hey everybody, welcome back. It's Dr. Trish Leigh with Coach Zach Carter in the house. Hi, Zach.
Hey, everybody.
And today we are both excited. It should be interesting to see how the conversation plays out. We're both excited to talk about the Enneagram personality test and the concept of personality, including this type of personality testing, is I wouldn't call it a integral, but I think it's an important part of our program when we help people leave pornography behind. And the journey is the hero's journey from the egoic or self-centered, protective self to your true authentic self who's able to be vulnerable, know who you are, and have the courage to go into the world and be that version without the mask. And personality is a mask that we put on. And we could probably spend the entire podcast talking about that today, but we're going to break it down and we're going to use Zach as an example.
I'm the guinea pig today. I'm going to try. We were just saying this beforehand that I'm going to try to be open and honest, but with my particular personality number, it's going to come across a little bit not like I want to come across to people. And so, but I'm just going to be open. I'm just going to be honest because I think there's a lot of truth to it. I was telling you before we got on that the first time I did this months ago and did research in the Enneagram and took it, and I was like 40% of the way there. And then I read the book you recommended on Enneagrams. And it was a pretty thick book, and I'm just about done with it. And now I'm like 80% of the way there. So I'm wondering if this conversation is going to take me the last 20%. And so I'm excited to talk about it.
And I got to tell you, like, from the standpoint of Enneagram and personality, self-awareness is really important. And, our journey is one of increasing emotional intelligence. And, we always talk about it. The first pillar of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. The second is self-regulation. So you can't learn to regulate yourself until you're aware. And so many people don't even know, they're not aware that their personality is a mask that they put on to be accepted, to be loved, to fit in, to survive when they were young. And it is such a tight mask that it doesn't feel like it can come off. And so I don't even try to get people to take it off. I just try to get people to wear the healthiest version of that mask. And it's called integration within the Enneagram. And I'm probably getting ahead of myself. I'll back up in a second. But the more self-aware you become about yourself, that's when your percentage of buying into it increases. So that's not surprising to me because so many people, when I start working with them, they'll be like, oh, this is hokey. What are we using personality? Is it like this personality test or that one? The merit of the Enneagram is that it allows you to increase your self-awareness, but then it also gives you a way to increase your self-regulation. It's not like, oh, I'm this type. And then you probably just talk about the type that you are. It helps you understand why you act and think and move through the world in the way that you do. And then it helps you to realize ways that you can improve. And the reason I like this is because it's done that for me. It continues to do it for me over and over and over. It is a tool set. It's strategies, it's coaching like that you can use for the rest of your life to keep yourself in a good spot.
Right. And the thing about it, and I think what we're trying to do with this video is that the Enneagram is both simple and extremely complicated. And it's nuts. And that's why it took me, it doesn't take me forever to get a concept, but this is something I've been chewing on for months, essentially, to better understand it. And so it really doesn't just stop with taking the test, finding out your number, and you're like, okay, that's interesting. It's really about seeing how it applies to all the different areas of your life. And I'm starting to see that for sure.
Yeah. And you're right. And for this episode, what I want us to do, and you and I talked about this a week ago, actually, and as we started to talk about it, we need to record this so other people can understand it. What the goal for me is to take the complex and make it very simplistic for people to get started with it, not overthink it, figure out its first utility. And if you never go past the first utility, you'll still be in really good shape if you learn how to use it in this way. So let me back up for a second. And actually, I wanted to say one more thing about the book that I recommend in the 90-day program. Is an awesome book, but it is so funny because I was thinking about this. I'm a 5. I'm a type 5. I'm a thinker. I like to know things. So the first book that I recommended really is one for the thinker. Like, it teaches you everything about the Enneagram. And since then, I've been reading a much more simplistic book, and we'll talk about that book also here today. And it will add to the 90-day program for everybody who's in that program, to get people started, because you can go so deep. But what I wanted to say is that there's 9 types of personalities in the Enneagram. Ennea stands for 9. So there's 9 different types of masks that people have learned to put on to help them to be able to feel confident, safer, more secure in the world. And I'll run down them from the top of my head real quick, if I can hopefully pull them all out. I have identified, it's called type sniping. When you identify people in your world, it is frowned upon. So do not start type sniping your friends, people, because trust me, I had dinner one night with my friend Ford, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? You're a X number. And he's like, what? And at the core of these personality types are people's fears and the way that they act in stress. So when you type snipe people, you're kind of calling them out on their stuff. So it does not go well. But I'm going to kind of tell you the 9 different types real quick. Type
and
1.
I have them. So if you forget a number, I'll
and if you want to add anything to them from whatever you have in front of you, that would be great too. So, because I'm going to go down thinking about all the people in my world. So type 1 is called the perfectionist. Do you have a different name there?
Reformer.
Yeah. So the reformer. So it's a perfectionist. It's a person who likes order, likes to keep, the person I'm thinking of, really interesting experience, because the first time I met this person, I was with this huge group of people, like 100 people. We're trying to get a photo taken. And this person was new to the group. And the person cruises on out and organizes the whole photo. And I'm like, man, that's kind of ballsy of that person, because like, she doesn't even know anybody. You know what I mean? And then I'm like, later on, I'm like, she's a 1, like wants to get everything in order, wants to get the picture taken. Again, that's a way of controlling feelings of stress. So this 100-person picture, that was a way to control the stress.
Right. And so it's also people that maybe are super religious or people super political. They tend to join things to help change the environment around them to make it align with the worldview that they see.
Yeah, cool. Like it. Yeah, great. Beautiful. Okay. Number 2 is the giver. It's a person who gives a lot. One of my friends, one of my really good friends, is a giver. And when we went to Nashville, my other friends like, have her take your stuff. Don't deal with your bags on the plane. I call my friend and I'm like, do you have room in your car? You know, Chanel said you might have room in your car. She's like, no, I'm not sure. Let me see. She texts back a minute later. We're taking a different car. We can fit your stuff. They ended up taking everybody's everything, like for no reason. We all could have just checked our bags. And I'm like, that is the giver. You know, she watches people's kids all the time. She volunteers at the PTA. And at the core of the giver is that they want to be recognized for their contribution. It makes them feel, it takes the edge off of stress, and it makes them feel validated when they give. Number 3, like Zach here, is the achiever or the performer. What do you have a different name for
achiever? Well, it says motivator here, but achiever was the one that we'll call it achiever.
Yeah, and achievers are motivators. They're, you know, that's a beautiful thing, is that the goal of achieving, and my best friend Chanel's the 3. I talk about her sometimes. So, you know, she's crushing it. She's created her own real estate company. She sells multi-million-dollar homes. She's, you know, for the last couple of years, she's got the most prestigious organization. She's just killing it. And she also volunteers. She wins these awards. So the achiever likes to feel the sense of achievement to make them feel good. And all of this goes back to your childhood. And we're going to stay on 3 for a second, because Zach's a 3, and Zach can tell me if this resonates, is that when 3s were young, I have some 3 in me, clearly here I am, but 3s, when they were young, they might not have been seen or heard, but then when they got an A, their parent goes, oh, little Susie got an A, congratulations. And so achieving became the way that little Susie was able to be seen by people. And that's how these masks get put on because you're really young and you go, oh, nobody really sees me or cares about me. But anytime I get an award, everybody celebrates me. And so then inherently inside you go, the way I can feel safe and secure is to get awards or to achieve or to be seen in that way. And the 3 is an achiever. Okay, let's move on to the 4. We'll come back to the 3 because we're going to do integration and disintegration with 3. 4, my son Declan's a 4. Equanimity is his passion. 4s, what does it call the 4 on your
individualist?
The individualist. So 4s, an interesting thing about 4s is they want to be seen for themselves. And it's pretty wild living with a 4 because 4s tend to, equanimity is something that's important to them. So they wear their hearts on their sleeve. Most of the other numbers can become really good fakers, fake great people. Like, how's life? Oh, everything's great if they're stressed out. If 4s are stressed out, you know it. And if 4s are happy, it's very high, very low, like very high of each one. And then the crazy thing is it goes against the grain. So if our whole house is really happy and there's lots of joy, Declan comes bursting in all cranky. And then if we're all arguing, this is a true story. The one day, there's 8 of us. So the one day everybody's arguing about something. This is a couple of years ago. Declan comes in, he makes us do a group hug. And then my son Seamus, he backs us into a corner to get this group hug going. And there was a window there that went out to our back porch. Seamus opened the window and snuck out the window. It broke the tension of the argument. Declan has parties all the time, to be celebrated for being the individual that brings people together. But then a couple parties ago, 2-3 weeks ago, in the middle of it, he turned because he got stressed out. You could see it in his eyes. He turned. He needed people to leave 9 out of 10 bad. and usually it's when the energy ramps up too high. So it's a pretty interesting number. I'm a 5. So 5s are the investigator. And it's funny, in the book that I recommended to you, it's Riso and Hudson is the original book. The Wisdom of the Enneagram is one of their books. In that, the 5, it's in the book, it says, not all 5s have multiple PhDs, but most of them do. And the first time I read that, I'm in my program for getting 2 PhDs at the same time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the thing. This explains so much to me. You know what I mean? That was 15 years ago, I'm 20 years ago now. I'm oh my gosh, this is the craziest thing I've ever read ever. And because when me and other 5s were young, information and learning is what made them feel good. And I grew up in a family of 8 people. I have 5 brothers and sisters. The chaos that I sometimes have in my own home, I had then. I didn't have my own bedroom. I had none of my own space. So to get away from it, I went into books. And I love to learn. And then I couldn't stop learning. That became part of my identity. It's just to be recognized, I would get more degrees. I'd get more certifications. I'd know more about people on any subject. And that made me feel good about myself. And so it's totally wild.
Can I interject for a second? Yeah. Because when I took the Enneagram, I assumed it was going to say I was a 5 because I'm I'm smart. I enjoy learning. I try to do this stuff. But when I actually dove into, and this is the nice thing about learning about all the numbers, is that you really find out if you really are that thing or not. Mm-hmm. And it was 5s will just learn Egyptian hieroglyphics just for the sake of knowing Egyptian hieroglyphics. I'm that's stupid. What do you get from that? And I realized in that moment, and you've even talked about, you're man, when I take a break, I just need to read some research papers. And I'm what? Why would you do that?
Totally. And you should see the research papers I'm reading right now. I have 2 or 3 of them on that screen. Mind blowing.
Right. But because I'm the achiever, it's about what do I get from this? So me diving into this book is a sense of accomplishment. Yes, it's about finishing the book. Yes, I want the information, but it's also more about I want the satisfaction of saying I finished this big book, and I'm oh, that's the achiever in me. It's not I get prestige because my learning can help other people. I can present myself as smart, and that's where I get, and that's essentially what it is. And so I think people can get their number when they hear a thing. They're oh, I'm definitely that.
Yeah.
But sometimes you're not. Sometimes
Well,
you're
it's
like
pretty,
this other
it
thing.
totally, and it's pretty interesting for me because I'm like the opposite. I love to give people the information. Then if there's too many people involved on the other end, I get messed up.
Like, what do
Like,
you mean by that?
like, an achiever wants a lot of people to recognize what they're doing.
Mhm.
Like, I want to know stuff and help other people know stuff.
Right. Mhm.
Because that's me being that talk about integration. That's me being a healthy 5. But then so for example, with the YouTube channel, so like I just start presenting things on my YouTube channel because I want the world to know. But then when there's a lot of people commenting back to me, I'm like, oh my God, there's a lot of people on the other end of this thing. So that's it's like the opposite of achieving. I just want the world to know it. But then if it's recognized too much, it kind of messes with me. It messes with my energy where, you know what I mean?
Interesting.
And I used to be more of an achiever when I was younger, but then I kind of shifted more into this 5. And the point is the happiest place for me is in front of my computer, learning stuff with nobody even having any idea about it. And
That
then I'll
sounds
go down
miserable
and
to me.
torture my husband with dude, you would not believe this German study I just read. You should see I just told you how I was talking to my husband. I'm like, dude, in the book I was just reading, and you could see his eyes roll back.
Well, and so with me being the achiever, me looking at the investigators, looking at the intellectual aspect, I look up to a lot of guys who are smart, who are intelligent, who probably fall into this category, but I look up to them because they receive prestige for this intelligence. So I want to have that intelligence in order to receive the prestige. And so, yeah, it was interesting when I saw that. Yeah.
And for me, listening to people, knowing they know what they know at the level that they know it, that's super exciting for me. Like when I hear and I know someone knows something so in depth that I love that, that sense of that. Okay, let's move on. Number 6 is the loyalist. And so an easy loyalists are into planning. Planning's a big thing for loyalists. What does it have for the description? The quick and easy. Does it have a description?
Oh, I don't have it. I just had the
okay, yeah. So loyalists, they a way of describing it is that when they're in health, they do a lot of really healthy planning. Plans make them feel secure. Plan's a major thing. When they disintegrate, it's doomsdaying. Fear is a big piece of an unhealthy 6. And so they're very loyal. They will be there for you. And then plans, that's something. So if you're a planner, you probably have some 6 in you.
Right.
Sevens
because when you commit to something, you commit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why all the planning comes up beforehand, because once you're committed to someone or something, it's like you're there. And so you got to know what you're committing to first.
My daughter Fiona is a 6. So I have kids, like my son Declan's a 4. My daughter Saoirse is a 3, and she's only 11, but she's definitely got 3 in her. My daughter Fiona is a 6. And so when she gets all stressed out, she doubles down on plans, and I have to get her to sit still for a minute, planning stuff and with her friends. And it's it's a stress response. And so when we're talking about here, disintegration is a stress response. And then when you integrate, you keep yourself in a healthy place where you make plans, you do them. You don't need to overly plan. And plans tend to be a big thing for a lot of, and another one of my friends, he'll plan healthy things when he's in a good place. And then the funny thing is when he's stressed out, it's zombie apocalypse planning. We're all moving to a bunker in wherever, you know what I mean? Literally
in Wyoming.
You can see him, you can see his health, emotional health flip-flop. Very interesting. And so in the end, you want to be able to be self-aware of these things in yourself, but then when you can see it in other people, you can have a little grace for people. So when Fiona's doubling down on plans, I don't stress out about her. I sit with her. I try to bring her down and bring her back to not needing all the plans. When Declan's cranky, last night at 11:15, he sent a text out to the group. It is literally hysterical. He likes the scrubber in the holder in the sink, but he never unloaded the dishwasher yesterday. So the sink was all jacked up and the scrubber was at the bottom of it. He sent out, we have a group text called family. He sent a group text out on the family saying that he can't use the scrubber because it's buried. Like, that is just so funny. So when he sends that text out, I know it's just because he's moving away to college next week. He's stressed out. So I'm going to deal with a bunch of weird scrubber stuff for the next week. And it's my job to keep him from letting that stress get to him. And he earned his Eagle Scout yesterday. Amazing. So proud of him.
That's great.
Like, so it was a big day and it's very big changes. And, you know, so anyway, so Fiona's a 6. My daughter Ava's a 7. I haven't seen her in 6 months because 7s are the enthusiast. They get out into the world and they will escape pain at all costs. They go and do as many exciting things. They are pleasure seeking to offset pain. They don't want to have any part of pain because pain doesn't resonate with, is not something they deal with well. And just going to continue to do exciting pleasure seeking things is a 7. And we work with some 7s in our group. One gentleman in particular is like, I'm a 7. I'm like dying here. I need to get out. And, you know, so that's, and again, integration, disintegration. 8s, my hubs is an 8. My son, Seamus, we always tell him he's a secret 8 because he doesn't have the total tendencies, but I know he's a secret 8. And because I said to him the other day, I'm like, Seamus, you're a secret. He goes, if you say the word 8, I'm going to go ballistic on you, which is an 8's response, which is so funny. And 8s are called the challenger. And so like they default to anger. Vulnerability is very difficult, but they're leaders. They tend to be leaders in health. And when they disintegrate, they're angry people. And my son Seamus, he's funny. He has this angry voice that he just does for sport. He's like the Hulk. His secret is he's always angry. And like, it's just his way of dealing with stress, like just using this angry voice. I'm like, dude, don't use the angry voice. Like, even when he's being funny and saying funny things, it's with an angry voice, right? Mask, man. Interesting. And then 9, my bonus son, Connor, is a 9. It's the peacemaker. And the peacemaker will keep the peace. So in times of stress, especially, they double down on keeping the peace. And 2 interesting stories about Connor. My husband was giving me the business. A couple months ago, Connor lived here and my husband's giving me the business. And I basically said to him, you will not be giving me the business like this in the middle of the kitchen. And he's just, you know, being an 8, an angry little 8 that day. And 8s respond to strength. And I know that. And talking about the Enneagram, like they respond to strength. So when I look him in the eyes and I'm like, you will not talk to me that way. It changes him. It shifts him into a better version of himself. So I have to muster up the energy to do that. Connor's sitting there and Connor's like, what blend of coffee should we have today? He's like, who's into the Sumatra? Anybody want hike? I'm not kidding. This is true. Like, it's just trying to, and like, we weren't even arguing or anything. It was just one little thing where he's starting to give it to me. And I'm like, I'm not, but it was conflict for 30 seconds. But I wasn't emotionally, we're not yelling at each other or anything. I'm like, you will not talk to me that way. Do you understand? And your Connor's like, what blend would you like? So funny. Right. And then another time, like and then we'll wrap up the types and we'll dig in. Another time, so interesting about Connor, about 9s. My son Declan had this very stressful time in life and he ended up passing out, which is a thing with vasovagal syncope. It's a brain thing. And Connor comes down, it's like 11 o'clock at night, and he's telling me a story. He's telling me the story of Declan passing out, which is currently happening. But he's telling me this in this leisurely way. I'm like, this is right now. But just his way of processing the stress of his brother passed out upstairs is to tell it to me in a story because it's very stressful. I'm like, you know, I'm getting into bed. I'm like, I fly up there. You know what I mean? Like, I go into full blown stress response. And like still to this day, that like the storytelling kind of blows me away because that's just a stress response. Of course, he should be going, Trish, Dad, you know what I mean? But instead he's going, you know, you not believe what's happening right now. So these 9 types, it's the way that you deal with stress in the world. So let's use 3 as an example, but I wanted to tell people, and if you're listening to the podcast, we always record the videos and put it on YouTube. I'm going to show you. Did you see this book, Zach? This is the newest book that I've been reading. It's called The Enneagram Guide to Waking Up. And Connor bought me this. It says, find your path, face your shadow, discover your true self. And it's really cool. I'm going to read the 3 one real quick because we're going to talk about you as a 3. And each chapter has a little story at the beginning. And this one, type 3, the path from self-deceit to veracity. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit in just a second, but each type has a vice and a virtue. And a vice is the thing that keeps them stuck in disintegration. And then as they integrate their personality and become emotionally healthier, it moves them to their virtue. And for 3, it's the path from self-deceit to veracity, which is truth seeking. And we'll see if this resonates with you. Once upon a time, there was a person named 3. She came into this world as a naturally emotionally child, and she was always completely true to her sweet emotional nature. Everybody could see that she had a very pure and authentic heart. But early in life, 3 saw that she was praised for what she did, not for who she was. Everyone around her got very excited and happy when she successfully completed her homework or did a trick in gymnastics or won a game. But when she expressed her true emotions, when she felt sad or disappointed or hurt, no one paid any attention to her at all. She felt lonely and scared when no one recognized her or cared about what she expressed from her heart. People seemed to like her when she accomplished things, but they acted as if she didn't exist when she was just being herself. And then it goes on to talk about like how lonely it feels to be by yourself, and that when you achieve, you're actually like a chameleon. She could change her outward appearance depending upon whom she was with and the situation she was in. And that's why they call it the performer too. And my friend Chanel, she's crushing it with her real estate company, but she's actually an actress too. Like she's performing at all times. So.
Right. And for me, it's, if I'm in one environment where a leader needs to step up, like I'll step up and be the leader. But if there's already a leader present, then I'm happy to step back if like support will get me the prestige over the leadership,
Yeah. That's really cool. And Chanel's like that too. She can, so it goes on, and it's really cool. What I like about this book is it kind of tells you in that story, and then it has a type 3 checklist. And here's the checklist for a type 3. You excel at reading a room, automatically tuning into the people around you to know what they value so you can tailor how you present yourself to impress them. You like setting goals and then doing whatever it takes to accomplish them. You define the result you want. You easily map a path to get there. You want people to see you as competent and successful. You feel confident about your public persona because you do whatever it takes to work hard and deliver. Without even trying, you see what you need to do to appear and be successful in different contexts in your life. You have an easy time accomplishing tasks and enjoy being productive and getting things done. It can be difficult to slow down or stop doing. Although you may not consciously try, you can effectively shift the way you appear to present the right image for every situation. You avoid failure at all costs. If you think you may fail at something, you don't even try to do it.
Yep.
And it goes on. There's 2 more main ones. While you value your relationships, they sometimes take a backseat to your work because you so naturally focus on whatever tasks need to get done. Although you can be very emotional on the inside, you consciously avoid expressing your emotions so you can perform. So, and then here it talks about key patterns, and it's a really cool book. But what I wanted to do today is to talk about integration and disintegration with those concepts in mind for a type 3. And I'm going to share my screen so that we can jump into the Enneagram Institute website. And the Enneagram Institute is basically, the real deal when it comes to Enneagram. On here, there's 9 type descriptions, and you can click learn more, and here's all the types. Oh, we should have had this up before, huh? So it talks about the main characteristics. So, type 3, the achiever, success-oriented, pragmatic, adaptive, excelling, driven, image conscious. That's Zach. Mine's the investigator, intense, cerebral type, perceptive, innovative, secretive, and isolated.
And I'll say I've taken a few different personality assessments. I took one called the Strengths Quest test. And one of the things that it says was a strength was what it called winning others over, which means I like to meet people and get them to like me immediately. And adaptability was another one. And that's what this is. And so it's interesting that across these tests, it solidifies a lot of the things that the Enneagram is saying.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, very cool.
And then, yes, perfect.
Yeah,
so the healthy levels. So the levels I wanted to dive into, because I think the difference between levels of development and the integration disintegration is very confusing. This is probably the most confusing part of the Enneagram. So I would love for you to dive into that.
This is the thing that I want people to focus on. So if you're listening, this is the coaching strategy for today. So get your journal out. And if you're watching the video, what I did was I went to EnneagramInstitute.com. I'm in type 3 right now because we're going to do Zach. And I scrolled down to where it says type 3 levels of development. Now, these levels of development are broken into 9 levels. So we got 9 types, 9 levels. The 9 levels are broken into basically sections of 3. So we have the healthy levels, 1 through 3, average levels, 4 through 6, and unhealthy levels, 7 through 9. Basically, every single level down at 9 disintegrates into addiction. And it doesn't say it here, but most of them do. They disintegrate into mental health disorders or challenges and addiction. And we'll talk about the 3 in a second. But the goal for disintegration and integration is to recognize what you actually need to do in your particular individual life to stay at level 1, 2, and 3. Ideally level 1, but obviously that's a big challenge, but to stay in the healthy levels. And then I call it a fault line. Like if it was an earthquake, the fault line is where you are disintegrating into unhealthy levels, and to recognize those actions in your own self. So let me just talk about, I'm going to read them to you real quick in the healthy, unhealthy, and in the average levels for 3, and then we'll talk about it with Zach. So level 1, at your best, you're self-accepting, inner-directed, authentic, everything you seem to be, modest and charitable, self-deprecatory humor, self-depreciating humor, and a fullness of heart emerge. You're gentle and benevolent. Level 2 is self-assured, energetic, and competent with high self-esteem. They believe in themselves and their own value. Adaptable, desirable, charming, and gracious. And number 3 is ambitious to improve themselves to be the best they can be, often becoming outstanding, a human ideal, embodying widely admired cultural qualities, highly effective. Others are motivated to be like them in some positive way. So those are the top 3 levels. Basically, at the 3 levels, you're ambitious, but you're doing what you're doing because you want to do it yourself internally, inner-directed, self-accepting. You're energetic and you're full of high self-esteem. So one takeaway right now is when you're at your healthiest levels, you're being true to your authentic self. This is emotional intelligence. This is like times of thriving. You know how I talk about thrival and survival? Thrival is at the top 3 levels. So let me stop there, Zach, and ask you, do you know what that looks like in your life? Like if you had to describe, if you could tell me one way that you're going to stay, like every day when you check in with yourself, you could go, yeah, I'm at level 3 because I'm doing this, that, and the other thing. What would?
Yeah. So currently, I'm in my master's program. And so, if I'm doing the work that needs to be done, we talk about journaling and setting your goals. So usually things like I usually have a couple hobbies and then a couple like professional and school stuff. And so like if I'm like playing drums and I'm exercising. So the more I fill my day with the things that I find important and actually do the things are days that I find a lot of enjoyment.
Yeah, and that's self-care and self-love. Because I also was going to point out that when you decrease in the levels, it's fear. You're moving into fear-based action. When you're up at levels 1, 2, and 3, you're acting out of love for yourself that extends out to others as love for others. But it comes from you're filling your cup up and then your cup overfloweth to everybody else. Extension. That extension. So at 1 to 3, you're doing what you need to do for yourself and it extends out. People feel that, and then people are motivated and inspired by you. And so like in your journal, if you're listening, and Zach, for you too, your exercise is write down what levels 1 through 3 look like for you. Chunk it into when I'm at my best, when I'm at my healthy levels, This is what my day looks like. This is what my week looks like. These are the things I say, because I'm going to give you some examples from myself in a minute. These are the things I say. And listen to this one. These are the things I feel. Stop and feel what you feel. If self-awareness, we're talking about like, okay, like I feel so excited to do my work today. I feel inspired. I feel it coming out of me. Does it feel like love for self and others, or does it feel like fear? Because if it feels like fear and anxiety or anxiousness or depression, you are definitely down in the unhealthy levels. And now this is tricky. Like, actually, I heard it somewhere the other day. Can't remember where, but when I think of it, I will tell you. Where it's like, you know, it's not how healthy of a person you are. It's how healthy of a person you are at any given time, because stress is the thing that will knock us into the lower levels. Okay, so let's talk about the average levels. Average levels are levels 4 through 6. Level 4, highly concerned with their performance, doing their job well, constantly driving self to achieve goals as if self-worth depends on it. Terrified of failure, compare self with others in search of status and success, become careerists, social climbers, invested in exclusivity and being the best. Level 5, that's level 4. So that's just one level into average, but you can see now you're externally validated instead of internally. Level 5 is become image conscious, highly concerned with how they are perceived, begin to package themselves according to the expectations of others and what they need to do to be successful, pragmatic and efficient, but also premeditated, losing touch with their own feelings beneath a smooth facade. Problems with intimacy, credibility, and phoniness emerge. So now you're getting to be a phonier version of yourself. So maybe in these levels, authenticity might be something that, you know, sparks some thoughts. Level 6, want to impress others with their superiority, constantly promoting themselves, making themselves sound better than they really are. Narcissistic, with grandiose, inflated notions about themselves and their talents. Exhibitionist, seductive, as if saying, look at me. Arrogance and contempt for others is a defense against feeling jealous of others and their success. So if you start feeling arrogant, and if you check in with yourself, you're actually feeling jealous of other people's, because success is really important to you. And when you see other people being successful, I know this is a real big thing with 3s, is like, can you celebrate other people's successes, or does it wound your ego? Because remember, this is a journey from ego at the low levels, true authentic self at the high levels. So for Zach, like, what do average levels look like for you? Do you have a sense of that?
So a story in particular that comes to mind was I used to help out at a church, and I'm a drummer, and I had been helping the church for a while before, as they were growing and becoming bigger. And I got cut from the worship team, and someone else was replaced me. And I remember like resentment and jealousy every week when I went, like feeling like I should have been on the stage, or why am I not on the stage? And it was about me and what I could do. It was less about using my talents to help others. Like, it's like, oh, I do this just because I enjoy it. Now it's like, oh, well, how does this make me look, you know, to other people?
Totally. Yeah. So great. So, you know, checking in with, that's going to be a fault line. That's going to be a fault line behavior for you. You get a pang of jealousy or a pang of I deserve more. That's going to let you know I am disintegrating. Red alert. And then before we get done talking, what I want everybody to know is, when you get that red alert, what are you going to do? Because you have to change your thought processes and your behaviors to integrate yourself again. And if you can do it at the fault line, you never get down to the unhealthy levels. And when it comes to consuming pornography, what we're talking about here is you're going to do the work to get yourself back to your true authentic self. In our 90-day program, that's what we do. We move you through this process. We get you to be the best version of yourself. But then if you let your guard down and a stressor comes in, I want you to know, red alert, I am going down. I need to bring myself back up before I relapse. And that is definitely doable, because I help people do that all the time. Okay, at the unhealthy levels, level 7 is fearing failure and humiliation. They can be exploitative, opportunistic, covetous of the success of others, willing to do whatever it takes to preserve the illusion of their superiority. Level 9, devious and deceptive, so that their mistakes and wrongdoings will not be exposed, untrustworthy, maliciously betraying or sabotaging people to triumph over them, delusionally jealous of others. Level 9, become vindictive, attempting to ruin others' happiness, relentless, obsessive about destroying whatever reminds them of their own shortcomings and failures. Psychopathic behavior generally corresponds to narcissistic personality disorder. So at these, and addiction is at the lower. So that's like what in here, level 9 is the acting out behavior that results. But for so many people at these unhealthy levels, they escape because they don't want to feel all those feelings. We know processing difficult emotions is at the core of a pornography addiction. So when things get tough, people retreat into escapism and into porn. So they don't have to feel all these terrible things down here. So they don't have to feel like they're not good enough. They don't have to feel like they're doing things wrong. They don't have to feel jealous. So are you willing to share any thoughts on what it feels like in this unhealthy range from hopefully back in the day?
Well, I never, because I just watched a movie called The Gift recently where one of the characters does this. He's clearly a 3 in the movie, and he begins to sabotage other people. I've never gotten down to this kind of level. The worst that I get is basically I shut down and I stop being productive altogether, which may lead us into the next conversation about disintegration into another number, which my understanding is the 9, the peacemaker, their unhealthy type shuts
does
down
nothing. Yep.
And does nothing. And that's what I do. So like if I get into a bad place, it's not that like I try to sabotage other people. It's basically I give up and quit, which goes along with I don't do things that I don't see as potentially successful. Yeah. And so that's my tendency when I'm at my unhealthiest places. I just shut down. I stop doing anything.
Yeah. So then we were talking about the Enneagram being complex, but it can be simple. But this takes it to another level of when you get stressed out, each type disintegrates. It can shift into another type. So like what Zach's talking about is when you're a healthy 3 under stress, you go to a 9. And I'm showing on the screen for anybody listening to the podcast, on the Enneagram Institute page, there's arrows within each type. So that when you disintegrate, it's into peacemaker. When you integrate, it's into the loyalist, being very loyal to people and planning and getting organized and staying structured. That's what a 6 is. That's what a healthy 3 does, stays organized and structured and move towards it. I'm a 5. I disintegrate into a 7. I start throwing darts at everything. And it's a major red flag for me because I don't disintegrate all the way down into psychosis. What I do is I just start doing one of everything.
Like everything sounds good. You're less focused.
Everything sounds good. And I'm like, yeah, let's do that. Let's do this. But when I'm in health, I go to 8. I go to strength and confidence.
Leadership.
Because 5s are in their head. So when I'm in a healthy way, I take everything I know and I get out into the world and I take charge and I help people with the stuff that I know. So that is how you can use the arrows in each type. And then going back to the passion, and I don't remember if they have it on this. Let me just look and see. On this page, it doesn't have the virtues and the vices, but like I was talking about in this book, The Enneagram Guide to Waking Up, when you figure out what your vice is opposed to what your virtue is, you want to stay in your virtue because it helps you to avoid. The vice is always out of fear. The virtue is always out of self-love. So and maybe I don't know if that makes sense to you in terms of, what this book says about a 3. It talks about self-deception versus veracity. And self-deception is like, out of fear, it's kidding yourself. Like in here, what it talks about in the levels is it's kidding yourself about your importance and, devious and deceptive. So that they're mistakes and wrongdoings. It's like self-deceit, that inflating your thoughts about yourself, that's the narcissistic piece, and covering your tracks in terms of the things that you're doing to stay in that place, versus veracity is being your true authentic self and having the courage to go out there and just keep being yourself.
Yeah, and with the fears, the fears of the three, we talked about this. It says of being worthless, and I guess the way I phrased it in my head, and you said it's essentially the same thing, was that my biggest fear is not reaching my potential, that I have all this potential, and that I shut down and I don't go and reach for it, was essentially what we were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And for me, I can talk about mine more personally. For me, my virtue as a 5 is non-attachment. And my vice is avarice. It's actually holding on to things. And avarice isn't greed, because avarice is mistaken to be greed a lot. I start talking about time. I never have enough time. And energy is a thing for 5s. And 5s protect their energy because being with other people is very draining for them. And they feel like they have to protect that energy because the energy is best used learning stuff. Mm. And so it's an interesting thing, because I definitely feel that. Like I've said it on this podcast lots of times, where my husband has to drag me out. Of course, once I get out, I'm glad to hang out with my friends, but like, I'm really just the happiest at home reading a book. He's going to a conference. He's like, I really want you to come. And I'm like, if I'm in the room, I'm the one I'm the social butterfly who's got the room going. But I'd rather be by the pool with 3 books. And he's like, you might be bored. I'm like, no, I won't. I'll be by the pool with 3 books after I work the room, so, and that's just non-attachment is I learn all this stuff and then I can share it. Non-attachment is I can make money and have it move through me. I always donate money so that I don't get attached to money. It's not my money. I don't see it as mine. I see it as the universe's. It comes to me, through me, to others, to connect us all. It's just energy. My time is used to help other people and to help myself. Self-love, love for others.
Mm. So can I get one more clarifying question then? Just to make sure. So in as much as you could summarize it, what is the difference between the levels of development and the integration disintegration? Because you're saying like, hey, when you're not in a good place, here are the things you're doing, but then also, hey, if you're not in a good place, you go to a different number. And so I think that can be confusing.
For right now, I would just stick with the levels of health as integration or disintegration. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't even worry about which other type you shift to. I would, even though that is super cool, but for right now, a first level in terms of integration and disintegration is you go to the Enneagram Institute website. You can take a paid test there, or if you go to Truity, TRUITY.com, they have a free test there, and it'll give you a pie chart of the numbers that you are in terms of the highest percentage to the lowest percentage. It's very cool. And then go to Enneagram Institute and look at those 9 levels of health. And within each section, 1 through 3, 4 through 6, and 7 through 9, write down what your behaviors, your thought processes, and your feelings are in each of the healthy, average, and unhealthy levels. Because that is disintegration and integration. Disintegration is you were at level 2 and now you're going down towards level 9. The integration is you're watching porn every single day. You're just escaping because you don't want to feel any of those ugly feelings down at 7 through 9. You stop watching porn, you start our 90-day program, and you start going up. Now you're at level 8, 7, 6. Your life's changing. You feel better. You feel more confident. You're less worried about what people think about you. You start the project, you start the side hustle you've always been wanting to, and you start making some money. Now you're up at level 3. You're running your own business and you're feeling really good. But then you see your best friend from high school and he has a similar business and he's making twice as much as you and he's working half as much. Now you're at level 5 because that is so stressful. And so now the call of porn is calling you back because you're starting to feel jealous because You cannot believe your friend goes on vacation once a month to the Bahamas. And you're like, I haven't been on a vacation in 3 years because I've been building this side hustle.
Mhm.
And so then you're worried about what he's got going on. And you're like, I got a good idea. Maybe if I just go on his website and I rip off everything he says and I put it on my website, I'll get more business. That's deceptive. And so now you go to yourself, oh my gosh, I'm so worried about what he has going on. I'm no longer worried about what I have going on. Then you go, forget him. I'm doubling down on what I want to create in my life. And as part of our program, we have people go through goals in many different areas of their life and figure out what they want. And then when you're setting out to create your goals, not your ex-best friend's goals, it's really tricky though, I will tell you, because like, when Chanel rolls up and she just sold $12 million of houses this month. And I'm like, damn, why did I sell $12 million of anything this month? I do, right?
Right. Well, you should come on our side of the achiever, and then maybe you would.
Exactly. But then, like every time, and I love Chanel, and hopefully she doesn't mind me sharing her stories, because she'll say it too. She's got, contracts to put in, and she's working so hard, and like, twice as hard as I am. But at this point in my life, I have 6 teenage, I've got 6 kids. 5 of them are teenagers. So to myself, I play this game where I'm achieving what I'm achieving, but I'm also showing up for all this parenting too. Our goals are different. That's the point. So I have to remind myself, I'm achieving what I want to in the parameters that I want to. Then I'm raising in my health again, because I don't have to, I'm not jealous about what she has going on. I'm psyched for her. It gets me back to like, thank God she's crushing her dreams, and thank God I'm crushing mine. And I want everybody else to crush theirs, even if they're different. And then that raises your health, because I'm like, eyes on my side of the street. I'm not worried about what other people have going on. That's how you use the levels of health for integration and disintegration. And if you do want to look at the chart and figure out which number you go to in stress and which one you go into health, it will also show you, because that's part of my fault line. When I start throwing darts at stuff, I've got to figure out how to get myself back to focus, because I go to 7. Everything looks good. And then I pull myself back to more of an 8. I take charge of my life and I go do the things that I want to. And for you, it's like, get off the couch, stop making peace, and get organized, get towards the 6 and double down on structure and planning and get back to the life that you want to create. And it's really powerful. I help people with this exercise all the time, and it blows their mind when they do it. And hopefully it's convinced you. Last 10%.
I think I'm 95%. I got to just go chew on it for a little bit. And yes, you've convinced
and
me.
I know you had a question, and I know we shouldn't be going into it, but this is the last thing, is that on this page, it shows the compatibility with other types. So if you're in a relationship, figure out, do you know what type your wife is?
My wife's a 2. Mm-hmm.
She's a 2. She's a giver.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it will tell you, if you click on 2, you can read this. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but it will tell you what each type brings to the relationship and potential spots or issues. And it is amazing. I hope you find this exercise as amazing, because it is super cool. And I'm going to just go to mine real quick, because it is pretty wild. I'm a 5, and 5s and 8s, my husband's an 8. 5s and 8s are highly compatible. And it'll say here, hopefully it'll say it, because like 5s and 8s are highly compatible because 5s are in their heads a lot. 8s are very body oriented. So like, I pull my husband into his head to figure stuff out, and he pulls me out of my head into the world. Like here it says, Enneagram 5s need to be more identified with their body and with their instinctive energy. They need to be more engaged with the practical world and feel their own sense of power and capacity. They can learn these qualities from 8s. On the other hand, 8s need to be more thoughtful and aware of the impact of their actions on themselves and their environment. They need to know more and to think of consequences. We totally do this for each other. And like, I didn't even know that was a thing until I read this, then this is so wild. Potential trouble spots or issues. When both 5s and 8s are in stresses, they are in gridlock. So when we're both stressed out, which thankfully hardly ever happens, we totally have this yin and yang. If I'm stressed out, he's in a really good spot. He can bring me out. If he's stressed out, I pull him out. And basically it says the biggest problem is that in the lower levels, these two separate physically from the other, and any real communication ceases to take place. Lower functioning fives tend to lose respect for anyone they judge to be irrational, destructive, or out of control, which an 8 does, you know. The storminess and threats of unhealthy 8s terrify 5s who must physically leave to feel safe. So that's why, like the story of me in the kitchen, I've taught myself, if he starts to throw, you know, angry shade at me, I used to bolt because it's fight, flight, or freeze. Mine is flight. I learned that as a 5. 8s learn fight. So if he's stressed out, he yells at me. So now I've taught myself so I don't disintegrate. I will go up to him and say, do not talk to me like that. And then as soon as I do, he shifts back. And then like, he'll do things to me and he'll be like, you know what? You know, basically get out of your own way and get back to real life. And I'll be like, and then I'll go, oh, that man's right. And then the times right. There's very few times when we are in gridlock of non-communication, but it happened. Like, I think I talked about this on a podcast, I don't know, a couple months ago. I don't remember what it was about, but I'm like, man, we are just like completely, you know, I'm like annoyed all the time. He's annoyed all the time. And we are just, anytime we try to talk, it's just a cluster. Mm. And I'm not even kidding. I walked away the one time. I'm like, oh my God, it's because I'm all stressed out and he's stressed out. We're in unhealthy gridlock. Mm. So what I literally did was I'm like, I have to like emergency raise myself back into the healthier levels to get communication going, to get us both out of this. Mm. And in that case, I did it. And there was another case after that where he did it. It's really cool. So like, once you know these things, you can go, the reason we haven't been able to discuss this thing for a week is because we're both so stressed out. And then you go offset your stress, or you just have more empathy for your partner. You just go, oh, I get why she's all stressed out. I'm going to give her grace and empathy. And when you do that, you shift her, which shifts you, and everybody's back up on the rise. It's amazing when you figure that stuff out. So read through your compatibility with your partner, because it should help in relationship dynamics, which is a huge part of staying out of the screen.
That's great. Well, thanks for explaining all this today. I hope everyone found it helpful as we did the Joe Rogan length of the
yeah,
video today.
I know, exactly. You can, some people tell me, they're like, yeah, I listened to you on 2 times fast. So if it's too slow on the podcast, go over to YouTube, throw it on 2 times fast.
Right,
okay.
right.
Thanks everybody for joining us again. And someone on YouTube said that I forgot to say, control your brain or it'll control you. But on the podcast, it's on the outro. So I have to make sure I say it for everybody on YouTube. So control your brain or it'll control you. We'll see you next time.
Perfect. Bye, everybody.